Almost 20 years ago, a woman showed up at my house with groceries. At the time, I was a relatively new therapist. I was working 3 jobs and raising 3 closely spaced kids in the middle of a very high conflict custody battle. We were living in a house the kids and I called Hell House. One of the 2 bathrooms didn't work, and the landlord was awful. And I had recently survived a nearly fatal car accident. It was a lot. A woman I knew through recovery asked me for my address. I didn't know why. And then she showed up. She had what seemed like endless bags of groceries. Not a couple of things. Groceries. There was a whole chicken, ground beef, actual ingredients to make meals. But she had also clearly thought about the fact that there were kids in the house, because there was peanut butter and crackers and Goldfish crackers and the kinds of things that a mother with 3 kids could actually use. I can still picture those bags of food coming into that house. I don't remember everything people said to me during that period of life. I don't remember every offer of help or every piece of advice. I remember her bringing groceries, and I remember how it felt. What she provided was more than physical nourishment. That afternoon changed something in me, which is why when we talk about kindness as if it's just about being nice, I think we're missing something. She did something kind for me and my children. We were obviously the recipients, but that isn't the end of the story, because kindness isn't necessarily a one-way transaction between the giver and the receiver. The brain gets involved. The nervous system gets involved. Social connection gets involved. Reward and hedonic system gets involved. And sometimes one act of kindness keeps moving through people long after the person who started it has gone home. So, since this is Be Kind to Humankind Week, I want to talk about what actually happens when we help another human being. Not just to them, to us. Be Kind to Humankind Week definitely sounds a little like something printed on a coffee mug. Be kind. Do something nice for somebody. Let someone merge in traffic. Call your mother. Don't be a jerk. It's all good advice. But kindness is actually much more interesting than that, particularly when you look at it through the lens of stress, the brain, and behavior change. Because kindness has a rather unusual feature. It can benefit the person receiving it and the person offering it. And I don't mean that in a karma will find you sort of way. I mean physiologically. I'm Dr. Joe, and I work with professionals, executives, first responders, and other people dealing with high demand lives, chronic stress, trauma exposure, alcohol use, and coping patterns that may have worked for a long time, but aren't working particularly well anymore. Some of the behaviors humans have been encouraging each other to practice for thousands of years turn out to have measurable effects on the person practicing them. Kindness is one of those. So is service, so is compassion, so is forgiveness, so is meditation. These practices have survived across cultures, religions, philosophies, and generations, partly because human beings figured out long before we had fMRI machines that they were good for us. We just didn't know what to call what was happening. Kindness is not a one-way transaction. We usually describe kindness according to what happens to the recipient. That's true, but it's incomplete. While you're receiving the benefit, my brain is having an experience too. Prosocial behavior engages part of the brain involved in reward and social connection. Depending on the kind of interaction, we're also involving neurochemicals associated with reward, bonding, affiliation, and stress regulation. Dopamine is part of that story. Oxytocin can be part of that story. And this is where I want to be careful, because social media has at times done terrible things to neuroscience. We don't have a little kindness button in the brain that dispenses 1 squirt of oxytocin every time we hold a door open. Human neurobiology is considerably messier than that. But the broader finding is important. We are profoundly social mammals. Our nervous systems respond to prosocial behavior. Helping another human being can be rewarding to the brain of the helper. Think about that. Two nervous systems can benefit from the same interaction. Now, put that next to chronic stress. Chronic stress asks something very different of the nervous system. When your brain perceives threat or demand, your sympathetic nervous system and stress response systems mobilize resources. That's useful and necessary. You want that system when somebody pulls out in front of you on I-10. You want it when there's an emergency. You want it when you need to perform or produce. The problem isn't that we have a stress response. The problem is when the system keeps getting asked to respond and doesn't get to come back down. And high demand settings, demand people get very, very good at living there. Deadlines, decisions, responsibility, conflict, email, traffic, children, aging parents, financial pressure, managing other people's problems, your own problems, another notification, another decision. The body doesn't particularly care that none of these things is a tiger. Demand is demand. Over time, that affects sleep, attention, mood, patience, cognition, relationships, and the amount of capacity that you have for the next demand. This is one of the reasons I'm so interested in what we repeatedly put on the other side of that equation. Not simply how do I eliminate stress, because you probably can't. What experiences are you giving your nervous system besides stress? This becomes especially important when alcohol has been one of those experiences. Alcohol is very efficient. If you've used it to decompress after work, quiet your brain, make the transition from work to home, feel less anxious, feel more social, fall asleep, or simply change how you feel at the end of a difficult day, your brain learned something. This works, and it works fast. The problem is that repeatedly changing your state with alcohol doesn't necessarily increase your ability to regulate stress without alcohol. And over time, alcohol can begin contributing to some of the things you're using it to manage. Poor sleep, anxiety, irritability, less capacity the following day, relationship problems. So now we have to build something else. Not one magic replacement, but a collection of experiences and habits and behaviors that give the brain other routes to reward, connection, regulation, meaning, pleasure, and relief. Kindness and service belong in that collection. Service has been sitting inside recovery culture forever. If you spent any time around 12-step recovery, none of this is new. Service is built into that model. The 12th step is specifically about carrying what you've learned to somebody else. People chair meetings, make coffee, answer phones, sponsor other people, set up chairs, give somebody a ride. For decades, people in recovery have been saying in one form or another, get out of your own head and go help somebody. And service isn't exclusive to AA. You see versions of it everywhere. Religious traditions emphasize charity, compassion, and service. Secular humanism emphasizes responsibility to other humans. Families teach children to help. Communities organize around mutual aid. People volunteer after disasters. We mentor, we teach, we bring casseroles. Helping other people tends to help us too. There's a caution here, though, for high-functioning people. Some of you just heard helping other people is good for your brain and thought, excellent, I shall help more people. No. Some of you are already professionally helpful. You manage people. You solve everybody's problems. You take care of your adult children. You are the emergency contact for approximately 47 people. You have somehow become responsible for Thanksgiving, even though nobody officially appointed you. Overfunctioning is not kindness. Sometimes it's anxiety with a clipboard. Kindness doesn't require self-abandonment. And here's where I think this connects to recovery. Whether you're sober, changing your relationship with alcohol, thinking about changing it, or simply realizing that some of your coping has gotten pretty expensive, eventually you run into the same question. What are you building instead? Because removing something isn't the same as building capacity. You need experiences that your brain can learn from. Connection, movement, rest, meaning, pleasure, novelty, mindfulness, creativity, service, and kindness. Repeated often enough that they aren't special recovery activities anymore. They're just how you live. That is part of the behavior change I find much more interesting than telling somebody what not to do. So, for Be Kind to Humankind Week, I have an experiment for you. Not a challenge. You don't need another assignment. Just notice what happens when you deliberately do something kind. And don't only watch the other person. Watch yourself. What happens in your body? What happens to your attention? What happens to your mood? Do you feel more connected? Do you get out of your own head for 5 minutes? Does the effect last? And try different kinds of kindness. Send the text you've been meaning to send. Tell somebody specifically what you appreciate about them. Mentor somebody without needing credit for it. Do something useful anonymously. Let somebody merge even if they clearly did not plan ahead and did not deserve it. We're practicing kindness, not pretending to be saints. The recipient of your kindness gets something, so do you. That's not selfish. That's human neurobiology doing what human neurobiology does. And if you're listening to this and realizing that alcohol has been doing more of the work of stress management in your life than you want it to, that's the work I do. I help professionals and executives look at what alcohol has been doing for them, what it has started doing for them, and then build other ways to manage stress, regulate, connect, decompress, actually enjoy their lives. Because taking alcohol out is one thing. Building a life that works without needing it to do all of those jobs is another.